Okay, I have to be honest with you right off the bat. When I first picked up the file for today's deep dive,
Yeah.
I was arguably more confused than I have ever been.
Really? How so?
Yeah, I saw the title of the source material. It was the James Webb Space Telescope points into deep space and finds a skull 1,600 light years from Earth.
Oh, yeah. It is a very catchy title. I'll give him that. It definitely grabs your attention.
It does. And I thought, yes, finally. We are doing space today. We're doing nebulas. We're doing, transparent cosmic skulls. I was physically ready to talk about astrophysics.
I hate to break it to you.
I know. I started reading, and I felt like I was the victim of the world's most intellectual bait and switch. Because this isn't about space at all, is it?
Not even a little bit. The space skull is just a footnote.
Right.
It's a little bit of flavor the author used to kick things off. But the real story here, the one we are unpacking for you today, is entirely terrestrial.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's about a massive geopolitical shift that is happening right now in February 2026.
It really is a massive shift. I mean, it feels like the ground is moving under our feet when you read these sources.
Let's hear it.
So here is the mission for this deep dive.
Let's hear it.
We need to figure out why the leaders of what we usually call the West, and we're talking the UK, Canada, France, Germany, South Korea, Finland, Ireland, why are they all suddenly booking flights to Beijing?
Exactly. It's a migration. And it's a migration that honestly flies in the face of everything we've been told for the last decade.
It is. And the core conflict here is just so jarring. For the last 10 years or so, the narrative has always been decouple.
Right, decouple.
De-risk, yeah, pull away from China, secure the supply chains. And now suddenly it looks like a hard U-turn. We need to understand why this is happening and, more importantly, what price is being paid for these plane tickets.
And that price is the key to all of this, because as we go through these sources, you'll see that this isn't just a friendly visit. This isn't just diplomacy as usual.
No, not at all.
This is a fundamental restructuring of global alliances.
So let's start with the phrase that just stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, I know the one.
The source material quotes a European ambassador. Unnamed, of course, because nobody puts their name on a, quote, this spicy.
Right.
And this ambassador explains why everyone is rushing to shake Xi Jinping's hand. They said the goal is to intensify relations with, and I quote here, the more predictable of the two current empires.
That is a heavy statement. The more predictable of the two current empires.
I mean, calling them empires is one thing, right? But implying that Beijing is the stable option, that feels like a complete inversion of the last decade of foreign policy.
Yeah.
We usually think of the West, and specifically the U.S., as the bedrock of stability.
It is an absolute inversion.
Yeah.
But we really have to look at the context provided in the source. This is where the quote-unquote Trump factor comes into play.
Yeah.
We are in 2026. The text is very explicit about this timeline. And just to be clear for you listening, we aren't endorsing this viewpoint. We are just breaking down how the source material is framing the situation.
Exactly. We're just reporting what the text argues.
Right. So it states that the current U.S. administration's actions, specifically the tariffs, the threats, the arbitrary decision-making, have essentially wiped out years of diplomatic capital.
The source actually says Washington blown the board up. That's a pretty violent metaphor.
It is, but it fits the narrative they're building. Think about the board as it was set up before. For over a decade, U.S. embassies worked incredibly hard to convince allies,
Like Germany, the UK, Canada.
exactly, to convince them that they needed to distance themselves from China. And it was actually working.
Yeah, it was.
Between the trade deficits and the war in Ukraine, there was a solid consensus forming in the transatlantic sphere. The decoupling was really happening.
Right. Momentum was definitely there. The West was aligning. We were seeing bans on tech, restrictions on investment. It felt coordinated.
And then, according to the source, the U.S. administration essentially torched that progress. By targeting its own allies with sweeping tariffs and threatening to withdraw security guarantees, the reliability of the United States as a partner just plummeted. So when that ambassador talks about the more predictable empire, they aren't saying they prefer China's ideology.
Right. They aren't suddenly communists.
Exactly. They are saying they know what to expect from Xi Jinping.
Whereas Washington has become a source of volatility.
Exactly. Business hates uncertainty. Governments hate uncertainty. If your closest ally is hitting you with trade wars, the autocrat who has declared himself leader for life starts to look appealing simply because he is consistent.
That is, wow, it's like running into the arms of the bear because the eagle keeps trying to peck your eyes out.
That is a very colorful way to put it, but yes, That is the dynamic the source is describing. And look at the scene in Beijing right now. This is a massive opportunity for Xi Jinping, and he knows it.
Oh, absolutely.
The source describes him welcoming these leaders with open arms.
He's rolling out the red carpet.
He's positioning himself not as a rival, but as the leader of a friendly great power. He's encouraging these leaders to sign new technological alliances, new economic agreements. And here's where it gets really interesting. He is even suggesting a gradual withdrawal from NATO to explore
alternatives to NATO. That is the kind of thing that would have been laughed out of the room just a few years ago. You don't just explore alternatives to the most successful military alliance in history.
Precisely. But in this current climate, people are listening. Xi is gaining immense political capital. He gets to reinforce his position as a global leader without having to concede anything.
Yeah.
He's flipping the script. Instead of China being the isolated pariah, he's painting the U.S. as the isolated chaos agent.
That is the part that really stood out to me. He's getting all this validation, all these photo ops, but is he changing anything? Is he stopping the espionage? Is he changing the trade policies that hurt Western companies?
No. The source is very clear on that. Xi hasn't budged an inch. The trade surplus is still breaking records. The espionage controversies are still there. The human rights issues, things European leaders used to lecture China about, are being completely sidelined.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to talk about leaders and Europe in the abstract. It creates this vague picture of people in suits shaking hands.
Right.
But the force gives us receipts. It names names. I want to look at who actually went and what they actually gave up. But some of these are, well, they're shocking.
If they are significant, these aren't just polite visits. They are highly transactional pivots.
Let's start with the United Kingdom. We've got Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Now, the source notes this is the first visit by a British leader since 2018.
Right. And remember the context there. Since 2018, we saw the crackdown in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Relations were in the deep freeze. The UK was one of the most vocal critics of Beijing regarding a national security law in Hong Kong.
Exactly. So Starmer goes to Beijing.
Yeah.
And what happens? The source says he accepted trade deals that were unthinkable just months ago. But the thing that really got me was the embassy.
The mega embassy.
Yeah, the mega embassy. For those who don't know, China has been trying to build this massive embassy complex in London, at the old Royal Mint site, specifically. It's huge.
Right.
And it's been blocked for years by local councils and security concerns.
Right. Concerns about surveillance, protests, and just the sheer symbolic footprint of it in the heart of London.
And suddenly, Starmer gives it the green light. That is a huge symbolic victory for Beijing. But what he didn't do is arguably louder.
You're referring to the silence regarding Jimmy Lai.
Yes, Jimmy Lai, the pro-democracy activist imprisoned in Hong Kong. Yeah. A British citizen, effectively. He has been a central point of contention for years, and Starmer conspicuously avoided mentioning him.
This is the pattern we are seeing across the board. It's a prioritization of economic survival over diplomatic values. For the UK, the economic pressure, which is likely exacerbated by the U.S. trade situation, means they need Chinese investment.
They need the trade flow.
They do. So the red lines regarding human rights or the safety of their own citizens get blurred. Silence becomes the currency of the trade.
It's a heavy silence. It sends a message to every other activist out there. It essentially says you are negotiable. But it's not just the UK. Let's look at Canada. We've got Prime Minister Mark Carney. Now, usually, Canada and the U.S. are in lockstep on trade. But here we see Carney cutting his own deal.
And it's a very specific, almost transactional deal. It borders on the comical if it weren't so serious.
It's surprisingly specific. The source says Carney reduced tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Now remember, the U.S. and the EU have been freaking out about cheap Chinese EVs flooding the market, right? Decimating their own auto industries.
Yes.
And Carney just lowers the gate. And what did he get in exchange?
Canola.
Canola. He traded electric vehicle protectionism, high-tech manufacturing for lower tariffs on Canadian canola oil.
It sounds almost trivial when you say it like that. EVs for canola. But it really highlights the desperation. Canada needs to move its primary products. If the U.S. market is becoming hostile or unreliable due to new tariffs, Canada has to sell that canola somewhere.
Right.
Beijing knows this. They are masters of this kind of leverage.
It feels like a colonial trade, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We will take your raw resources and we will sell you back high-tech finished goods.
That is exactly what it is. It's moving down the value chain. They give a little on agriculture, which placates the farming base in Canada, and they get a massive strategic win on high-tech exports like EVs.
Yeah.
It's a masterclass in leverage. Beijing is securing market dominance while Canada is just trying to clear this year's harvest.
And the source mentions Emmanuel Macron of France and Petteri Orpo of Finland are in the exact same boat. It's like a line of dominoes falling. Everyone is scrambling to secure their own lifeboat because the main ship, the Transatlantic Alliance, feels like it's taking on water.
It is the definition of every nation for itself, and that fragmentation is exactly what Beijing has wanted for decades. Divide and conquer.
Right.
If the West is united, they have leverage. If the West is fragmented, China is the giant in the room with every individual country.
But there was one exception, right? Or at least someone who tried to be an exception. The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz.
Yes, the German exception, as we might call it.
The source says he made a slight effort to maintain composure, which sounds a bit like a backhanded compliment, but let's give him credit. He actually tried to bring up the tough stuff.
He did. Merz publicly raised issues about state subsidies, the unfair advantages the Chinese government gives its companies, which end up crushing European competitors. He didn't just roll over like some of the others appeared to.
Why him, though? Why was Merz the only one willing to risk awkwardness at the dinner party?
The source offers a really interesting theory here. It suggests that German public opinion is simply more informed about Eastern affairs than its neighbors.
I loved that part. The text specifically throws shade at the Spanish elite, calling them largely ignorant on these matters.
It was a very pointed comment. But
Yeah.
the logic holds. Germany has a very complex history with China. German industry was the biggest winner when China first opened up. They sold all the machinery, all the cars. Germany essentially built the factory that is China.
Right. It was a symbiotic relationship for a really long time.
But now they are the biggest victim. China took that technology, learned it, improved it, and is now beating Germany at its own game.
Yeah.
The Chinese EVs are beating German cars. Chinese machinery is beating German machinery. So the German public and industry understand the threat better. They know that a friendly hug from China can be suffocating.
So Merz stands up, makes his points about subsidies. He tries to hold the line. And how does Xi respond? Does he apologize? Does he offer to change the policy?
Not at all. He effectively pats Merz on the head. He says he supports Europe in its pursuit of autonomy.
Autonomy. That's code, isn't it?
It is absolute diplomatic code for distance yourself from the United States. When Xi tells Europe to be autonomous, he's encouraging the split. He completely ignored the complaint about subsidies.
Didn't even address
He
it.
didn't even address the economic grievance. He just pivoted right back to the wedge issue. You don't need America. You can stand on your own. With our help, of course.
It's so dismissive, yet so effective. I support your independence while you become dependent on me. It's verbal judo.
Exactly. He turns the complaint into an opportunity to drive the wedge deeper between Europe and the U.S.
So China gets the photo op, they get the validation, they get the tariffs lowered on EVs. Is that it? Is that all they want? Because the source suggests there's an even bigger game being played here.
Oh, the photo op is just the appetizer. This is where the source material gets truly fascinating and honestly a little chilling. It reveals that there is a debate happening inside China right now, even in their state media.
A debate. I thought everyone just did what Xi said.
Well, there are factions, and the hardliners in Beijing are looking at this situation. They see Trump in the U.S., Europe in panic mode, and they are saying, this is a window of opportunity. Don't just take the meeting, squeeze them.
Squeeze them. That sounds ominous. What does that actually look like?
Their argument is that Europe is seeking refuge. They are running away from the bully, which is how they view Trump, and looking for safety. And the hardliner view is simple. Refugees have to pay.
That is a brutal way to look at diplomacy. You need us more than we need you.
But the source says that is the growing acceptance in Beijing. They genuinely believe European governments need to strengthen ties with China more than China needs Europe. So the price tag goes up.
And what's on the bill? If I'm a European leader seeking refuge, what do I have to pay?
The list from the hardliners is very specific. First, isolating Taiwan. If you want access to the Chinese market, you downgrade your relationship with Taiwan. No more unofficial visits, no more trade offices. You erase them from your diplomatic map.
Okay, that's a massive concession.
Second, open borders for technology.
You mean the stuff we banned?
Yeah.
Like 5G networks, surveillance tech.
Exactly. The technologies that were regulated or banned due to national security concerns, the hardliners want those bans lifted. They want full access to Western infrastructure. They want Huawei back in the core of the network.
Wow, and the third one?
Third, and perhaps most morally compromising, they want an end to the recriminations regarding minorities in Tibet and Xinjiang.
So basically, shut up about human rights.
Yes. Abandon the moral high ground. If you want economic stability, if you want refuge from American tariffs, you have to accept the Chinese narrative on human rights. You have to pretend the camps don't exist.
That's a heavy price. We're talking about fundamentally altering the West's stance on democracy, security, and human rights.
Yeah.
We're talking about unraveling the moral fabric of foreign policy.
And that's the danger the text is pointing out. It's not just about selling more canola or cars. It's about normalizing a worldview. If the UK, Germany, and Canada stop talking about Xinjiang because they need trade deals, then the global pressure on those issues evaporates.
Right.
It validates the CCP's model without forcing them to change a single thing.
It feels like we've come full circle in the worst way possible.
We really have.
So let's recap this for everyone listening, because it is a lot to process. For 10 years, the strategy was decoupled. The West was trying to convince the world and itself to leave China's orbit, to diversify, to be safer, to build a security architecture that didn't rely on an authoritarian rival.
And they were succeeding. That is the real tragedy of the situation described in the source. The pieces were on the board, the strategy was working, companies were moving factories to Vietnam, to India, to Mexico.
And then instability in Washington. The blown-up board we talked about pushes everyone right back, and not just back to the status quo, but back into a position of weakness.
A position where they are the petitioners, they're the ones traveling to Beijing asking for stability, and that gives Xi all the leverage.
And for you listening, besides the obvious geopolitical shift, what does this mean for the average person living in these countries? If I'm sitting in London or Toronto or Berlin, why should I care if my prime minister shakes Xi's hand?
You should care because it means that the values your government claims to uphold, free speech, human rights, privacy, might be up for sale. When we see a leader trade EV tariffs for canola, that's a business deal. We can debate the economics. But when we see a leader stay silent on the imprisonment of a pro-democracy activist like Jimmy Lai, or when we see the potential reintroduction of compromised surveillance tech into our cities, that is a moral and security concession. And the source warns that this is just the beginning.
It validates the CCP's model without forcing them to change a single thing. They get to have their cake and eat it too.
Precisely. They get the benefits of being a responsible global power without actually acting like one regarding international norms. They get to be the predictable empire just by staying still while the US thrashes around.
It really makes you think about that closing line of the source material. It gave me chills. It said, "In this new world, nothing will come without a price."
It's the ultimate warning. We often think of price in terms of money, inflation, tariffs, taxes. But the price here is sovereignty, it's integrity. If the predictable empire demands the isolation of Taiwan or the installation of surveillance tech in our cities in exchange for economic stability, have we already agreed to pay that price? Are we just haggling over the details at this point?
That is the question I want you, the listener, to sit with today. We look at these headlines: Prime Minister visits China, signs trade deal, and it looks boring. It looks like business as usual. It looks like adults doing adult things.
Yeah.
But if you look closer, based on what we've unpacked today, are you seeing a trade deal or are you seeing a ransom payment?
And once you pay the ransom once, they usually come back for more.
They always do. On that cheery note, maybe we should have stuck with the nebula. Looking for answers in the stars seems a whole lot easier than facing the map of the Earth right now.
The transparent skull nebula was definitely less complicated. It just sits there and glows. It doesn't ask for tariff reductions.
Much less complicated. But hey, that is why we do the deep dive, to find the skull hidden in the geopolitical nebula.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We will catch you on the next one.